Hello. Today I'm bringing you a very special newfound friend, Kristine Brown. Hi, I'm Judy Shearwaters. Welcome to my channel. Here I bring you author interviews of ordinary people who have a story they wanted to share with the world. I also bring you short little writing prompts to keep those creative juices going in your own head and to get them written down on paper for your generations to come. Because you know what? You have a story to tell. So let me help you tell it. So as I said, today I have a special person I want you to meet. Kristine Brown. She is a communicator at heart, a nurturer by God's design, and a lifelong learner and teacher. She's a wife, mom, stepmom, and Mimi, who's learning to embrace the struggles of an empty nest and long-distance family connections. Kristine and her husband have endured challenges like blended families, infertility, life-threatening illness, and life in the ministry. Through it all, they have seen God's faithfulness and felt his unfailing love. She says she's passionate about sharing that same faithfulness and love with women and teen girls. She considers herself an unlikely pastor's wife who trudged through life's struggles until she came face to face with colorectal cancer. On that journey, she learned the secret to living cinched in God's promises, untying old habits like worry and doubt to secure daily peace and joy. She loves connecting with women today, connecting women of today with women of the Bible and sharing lessons learned through her website, her freelance writing, and speaking to women's ministry groups. She has three books out that I will talk to you about at the end here. So let me introduce you to our guest today, Kristine Brown. Well, good morning, Kristine. How are you?
Hi, Judy. I'm great. So happy to be here.
I've already introduced you to my audience, and so we're going to dig right into the questions and get to know you just even a little more. Okay?
Sounds great.
All right, Kristine, when did you start writing, and what do you think encouraged you to write your very first book?
Judy, I remember actually the moment that I decided to write a book. I am a former seventh grade English teacher. I taught seventh grade English for many years and loved being able to sow the love of writing into young people, into the students. And that can sometimes be a challenge with 12 to 13-year-olds. But I'd been teaching for so long, and one day, a young lady who was interested in writing actually brought up the topic of writing a book with me. And she said, "Have you ever written a book?" And in that moment, I thought, well, no, I haven't. And here I am encouraging these young people to love writing, and I haven't written a book. And I just felt a stirring right then in my spirit that was something that I wanted to do. So that's when I started putting together the idea for my first book. And that's been about 9 years ago.
And that's really neat. I love it. Tell us about your previous books. You have two other books. Tell us about those.
I do. My first book, which came out in 2016, is called Over It: Conquering Comparison to Live Out God's Plan. And one of the things I love to do in my writing most is connecting today's women with women of Scripture and telling their stories in a way like we're walking alongside them, because we have so much in common with the things that they went through. And I like to connect that with the things that we go through today for readers. And so Over It does that, and it talks about our identity and our worth and where we place that. So there's three women that I teach about in that book. That was the first one that came out. And the second book came out as a result of that. Listening to my readers and my community, after they read that book, a lot of women said to me, "I'd really like to have that book for my teenage daughter or my granddaughter or my niece." And I thought, well, if I was going to say this to a teenager, how would I say it? And from that, I started putting together the second book, which is the teen devotional version of the first. So the second book is also called Over It, but it's the teen devotional trading comparison for the true me. And that came out in 2019.
Very nice. Very nice. So in your empty nesting years, you were faced with colorectal cancer. What was your treatment journey like after being diagnosed? And what was your biggest challenge about your treatment?
Well, you know, everyone's treatment journey is so different. It amazes me talking to different people who have even gone through similar diagnoses that have had different treatment journeys. And I think that's because there is so much out there available, and it's so personal that you really have to know yourself. And when you're faced with all these options and you have wonderful doctors that present all these options to you, you have to choose what's right for you. And with my treatment, it kind of changed and shifted along the way, because we expected that I would need to go through chemotherapy, radiation, and then end with surgery. But the chemotherapy and radiation, once I went through that and I went to my surgeon, he looked at it, and I remember the day that I visited him, and he said, you know, I looked at what's there and I didn't like what I saw. And in that moment, I remembered, you know, sometimes what we see and what we don't see is two different things. And I need to focus on what we're not seeing. So we went ahead and we did biopsies, and he didn't find any cancer cells present. And that was a miracle, because what he saw didn't look great. And so the chemotherapy and radiation had taken care of it. I didn't end up needing surgery. And so that was just truly a miracle. And I'm very thankful for the doctors and nurses and everyone who helped me along that journey. The chemotherapy and radiation was more intense than I had anticipated. And probably, I think for me, the most difficult part physically was the radiation. But overall, the most difficult part of treatment was how to talk about it, how to help others in my life and my loved ones understand what I was going through, because cancer journey is, like I said before, so personal. It's hard for people to understand unless they've been there.
Sure. You know, let's talk about your newest book, Cinched. It was published in September of 2021, still very new. It's a story of Rahab intertwined with your own story. That's how memoirs are written, basically. Why did the story of Rahab fit with your cancer journey? And then what encouraged you to write Cinched in this way?
It was interesting. And when people first hear that, they think, how does the Rahab story tie into a cancer journey? But the book, and the essence of the book, is about trusting God with our hardest things. Everything from those tedious moments in our daily lives to life's most difficult circumstances. And Judy, my family and I, before I ever found out that I was diagnosed with cancer, we were going through some things, as families do, some struggles. And I just couldn't seem to get past it. I would pray about it, but I couldn't seem to give it to God and let him handle it. And I didn't realize that I had been living in defeat day after day. And I, in that time, had been studying the story of Rahab. And I realized when I was reading her story, how certain she was that God was in control. And that stuck out to me. She would say, you are the God of heavens above and the earth below. And she was so sure. And I thought to myself, I want to be able to live with that kind of certainty. I want to be able to trust God like that. And so I prayed and I made a commitment that I was going to learn how to trust God more. And within 2 weeks, I found out about my cancer diagnosis.
Oh my goodness.
That was the connection for me with Rahab. And it helped me to really take those things that she said in the Bible and apply those lessons to my own journey of learning to trust God more.
Mm. Oh, wow. Huh. Well, I found in your intro, actually, your purpose, your theme of this book. You said the essence of, the essence of this book is to feel frustration, doubt, and indecision loosen their hold as we learn to secure our faith to God's promises. So that's your desire and goal for your reader, your purpose for writing Cinched. Can you kind of expound on that? Explain a little bit more?
I think as writers, sometimes there's so much to tell, and we could probably fill book after book with the things that we experience. And it was important for me and myself, the way my mind works, to stay focused on what I really wanted to say. So there was a couple of different reasons for me to put that purpose in the introduction. I wanted the person who picked up my book to know what to expect, to know the hope that I was wanting to offer them in the book, because a lot of times you pick up a book and you're not sure if this is the right book for you in the moment. And then also for me, so that as I was going through each chapter, I could make sure each chapter I'm staying focused on that promise of what I want readers to expect from this book, instead of chasing a rabbit trail, because, you know, writers were known to do that sometimes too.
We are.
So that was important to me.
Huh, very nice. So how long did it take you to write Cinched?
Well, I hope this doesn't discourage any writers out there. I would say the actual writing was about 6 months. But I do a lot of intense research leading up to it, because that's the nature of the type of writing that I do, nonfiction, what I call narrative nonfiction, which has qualities of memoir in it, but there is the biblical element, and I want to make sure I get that right. So I do a lot of research. The entire process, start to finish, was 4 years. From the time I started that journal, each time I write a book, I start a journal and start just jotting down ideas and researching and recording it. And the book doesn't get written until that journal is full and I have all my notes together. But to actually do the writing, I would say about 6 months.
Okay, very nice. Okay. So who would you say is your audience?
And again, developing a picture of who our audience is really important too. And I would encourage anyone who wanted to write a memoir to think about that. I think it's important when we go into writing, especially knowing what all we're going to share, how much detail to share, that it's important that we decide, is this for my family? Is this for a wider audience? Who is it that I am writing this for? And my audience is for that woman who woke up this morning rehashing and worrying about the same problem that she already prayed about yesterday, because that woman is me. And we have a hard time letting go. We have a hard time living like we trust God with those things that we've already given to him in prayer. And that's a struggle that I had. And I realized that that's the woman that I was writing this to. And as I started to reach out and listen to people in my community, I realized that other people have this struggle as well. And that's how I found that reader and decided that that was my audience. That's who I wanted to write to.
Great, great. So this isn't just for cancer patients, but it's for the lady who, or it could be for a man too, I suppose, right? But mostly for women who have that problem.
That's right. That's right.
Who is all of us probably. So I want to ask you, would you mind reading a portion of your book, Cinched, for us?
Sure. Let me grab my copy here. I'll read just the opening.
Okay.
When we're starting to write, it's hard to know where to start. I think a lot of times we get stuck, we get bogged down with that because we're not sure where to start writing our story. So I decided to begin in the moment where transformation became a reality to me, that I knew something in my life needed to change.
Okay.
The introduction title is, Do I Live Like I Trust God? I ran my finger along the seal, knowing the diagnosis scribbled in doctor's handwriting hid just beneath the stark white fold. Even the light streaming from the window couldn't give away its secret. Bullying thoughts urged me to just get it over with, to slip my finger under the edge and lift, satisfy what I'd been dreading. But I knew what would happen once I read those words. I knew because I'd been there before, receiving devastating news and being completely unraveled. I knew if I chose to open the envelope, I'd become vulnerable to the words written in bold black ink. Once sealed in the folder marked permanent file in my mind, those words would gain more power than they deserved. It had only been a few short weeks since I made it through the last battle. I'd held on for dear life. To what? I don't know. I just prayed for the strength to get through it each day, hoping for relief. Now, instead of getting the reprieve I longed for, I came face to face with something even worse. And with it, a thought wrapped in one life-defining question. Do I live like I trust God to handle this? It should have shocked me. The question, I mean, if you were to look at my life today, you'd probably say, of course, someone like her trusts God. I pray, I have my daily devotional time, I read the Bible and even memorize verses. Yet instead of exuding peace, joy, and victorious living, I live in a perpetual state of defeat. When decisions must be made, my kids don't have it all together, or I face a mountain of challenges. Yes, the answer to my question, do I live like I trust God to handle this, came all too easily. And with it, knowing something had to change. Not in my circumstances, but in how I walked through those circumstances. I felt the weight of the envelope grow heavier every second. I could allow its contents to drive me back into a pattern of worry, frustration, and doubt, or I could take a step toward discovering peace. Would I choose to move to a new level of trust in the God I claimed to know? That choice would mean pressing beyond knowing and saying to actually doing. Truth be told, I'd been stuck rehashing the same problem, stuck beneath a mound of crippling thoughts, stuck fearing the worst or wondering how things could possibly work out. And until the envelope, I hadn't uncovered the real issue. No, I didn't live like I trusted God.
I love that. I love that. And being a memoir writer, of course, myself, I love the way that it's very much a story. It's very much a narrative. It's not, it is memoir that holds your attention. And I love your book. It just read so easy, and yet there's so many wonderful nuggets of truth in there that I could apply to myself all the way through it. So I thank you for that, for my personal growth in that.
Thank you, Judy.
So many of my in the audience are looking to write their own memoir. What advice would you give to first-time authors?
I would say to just begin. That would be my advice. I have my journal here that I started when I was writing Cinched, and there's a quote on the front of it. And let me just say, each time I start a book, I buy a new journal because I love journaling. Some people like starting by, putting it in a file on their computer, but I love to start writing it out. In this journal, on the front, it says, the best way to get something done is to begin. Mm. And I think we discount those small steps of just sitting down and starting to scribble out ideas in our journal. It doesn't have to be perfect. We don't have to do it in timeline order. It doesn't have to start from the very beginning, but just start putting some thoughts down. And that beginning is the best thing that we can do. So that would be my advice, to grab you a journal. Mine's got all kinds of nice little tabs and everything on it, and just start writing.
Great advice. Great advice. So I give out many memoir writing prompts on my YouTube channel to encourage others to get their own stories written down for their generations to come. Can you give my audience a prompt, please?
Oh, I would love to. I like to focus in when I'm writing on a specific time because it's always hard for me, like I said before, to know where to begin. When you're thinking about writing, if you want to write about, let's say, a certain vacation or something like that, it's hard to know where in that space to begin the story. So I'd like for the audience to focus in on one specific moment. And the way to do that would be to think of a precious time. And I'll title this Time Spent with You. It could be a coffee date with a friend. It could be a time when you were able to go visit your grandchild. Whatever it is, I want you to think of a time spent with you and take a picture in your mind of one specific moment. When you take that picture, now I want you to describe that moment. What's happening in that snapshot? You can describe it using your senses, the 5 senses. What am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I hearing going on in this photo? It could be a couple of sentences, it could be a paragraph, or it could be a couple of pages, but just describe what's happening in that snapshot of a time spent with you.
I love it. I love it. Now I've just been able to spend a few days with my second grandbaby. I can think of so many of those precious moments.
Oh, yes.
But I love that idea. Thank you, Kristine, for sharing with us today. I know my audience has gotten a lot from it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed being here.
Thanks for watching today. I want to remind you, as we mentioned in the interview, that Kristine has 2 other books. The first one, Over It, Conquering Comparison to Live Out God's Plan. And then her second book, Over It, a devotional for teen girls. I will put a link to all 3 of those books down in my show notes, but you can also just go to Amazon.com and pick up one of her books. They are delightful. So if you enjoy receiving author interviews like this or just short writing prompts to get your own memoir written down, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Leave a note for me. Let me know what stage of writing you're in right now, or maybe give me some ideas as to what you would like to write about. So until next time, I'm Judy Shearwaters. You have a story to tell, so let me help you tell it.